everyone. This is what we're going to be making today. This is has a dagger with a dragon head and a pineapple twist handle. I'm making it out of spring steel. Take an old spring from a truck, probably in the 1980s. I've already uncoiled it into a straight bar where I can forge it into a blade. So that's the steps. Right now I have a piece in the fire. I did a little work on it, squared it up already. And I'm going to begin to start to make the dragon's head. Now this is what you call a yellow heat. It's a good heat for forging. You want to forge yellow heat most of the time. You can go down to a red or a cherry red, but with tool steel you don't want to get below a cherry red. It's not good for the steel. Okay, that's just put a ledge on there for making the horns. And when you put your steel in the fire, you don't want to dip it in like this, because there's a chance of burning the steel, and then you have to cut that piece off and throw it away and start over. When the steel burns, it gets white hot and sparks and kind of melts. Especially on tool steel, you got to be extra careful not to heat it too hot. It's going to take a few minutes to heat up. What we're going to be doing is slitting this steel. We're going to use a slit chisel, which is a narrow, pointy chisel made for a splitting iron. I have some water here to cool it. When I drive it in the metal, it heats up pretty quick, so I have to cool it so it doesn't take the temper out of the chisel. Now I'm going to be doing it on the anvil, so I put a piece of steel, mild steel on there so I don't hurt the face of the anvil. And then if the chisel goes through, it doesn't hurt the chisel at all. And you want a nice bright heat for this. The hotter it is, the easier it'll split. That's just about what you want right there. And I'm wearing a glove on my left hand because that metal's pretty hot. And it goes up. It'll burn your hand pretty quickly. And the scale falling off will burn your hand too. So it's always good to wear a glove anytime you do any hot work like this. Okay, that's about as cool as you want to let it get for splitting. One more time ought to do it. That's it. Now what we're going to do is square these up and point them. Now blacksmithing is hot, dirty work. And you have to have a lot of patience because it's slow work. It takes time to do everything. And you're definitely going to get burned. There's no way around it. It's part of the job. the fire is made with powdered coal or coal slack, and it's I mix it with water so it doesn't burn. So instead of burning, it cooks and turns into coke. This is coke. That's what this is. And coke is basically cooked coal, just like charcoal is cooked wood. So as it cooks, the impurities burn out, and so you have a cleaner fire, and the coke burns a lot hotter than just raw coal. So it's basically a coke fire. It's banked with wet powdered coal, and I burn coke in the center. And when I'm done, this ring around the powdered coal will be a ring of coke, and that's what I use. It comes out, I break it up, take it out in big chunks like this, and then break it up for the fire. And we're going to be welding here pretty soon, and that's the kind of fire you want for a welding fire. Good coke fire. If there gets to be an interest in this, I will probably do a video just on building a fire from the start. But this is a little more interesting. Yeah, splitting the horns would be the same way if you were making a fork. And blacksmiths used to make everything that was iron, even the forks and spoons. And everybody carried a knife in the old days, not so much for protection or fighting, but for when they went to dinner. Everybody had their own knife. Another reason I'm making a knife is there's a lot of interest in blades these days, so we'll make a knife. Yeah, the scale builds up on there, and if you don't brush it, it just keeps building up and you keep pounding it back into the metal. And I'm brushing this good because I'm going to weld it. I don't want any scale in there. It's just a light weld. Might not even be necessary, but it's a good way to demonstrate an easy weld. What we're going to do is a light weld on this just to seal it up. And for welding flux, you put welding flux on the metal because it floats the impurities away, so you have just metal to metal and helps it to bond together. So what I use for welding flux is just borax, simple borax. I've used it for hundreds of years. There's several welding compounds out there that are very good, special mixes, but I've always just used borax. All right. You bring the metal up almost to a white heat. Scrape, wire brush off all the impurities, all the scale and slag that's on there. There's a good bit of slag on there. I'm going to clean my fire real quick. That's one thing about a forge weld. You want a really clean fire, a nice clean fire, plenty of coke. When the coal burns, you get what's called a clinker. It's the impurities out of the coal goes to the bottom of the fire. Now that'll just lay there, and if you don't clean it out before weld, all these little pieces blow up onto the metal and get in your weld. It helps, well, it prevents the weld from bonding. It's one of the things that prevent the weld from bonding. So you want a clean fire and a very hot fire. You want a white hot fire. So this will take a few minutes to heat back up again. Okay. Again, we're at, well, it's a little less than a welding heat, but it's close enough. You wanted a near welding heat. Brush all those impurities and slag off there good. And then you dump your borax on there, just kind of, it'll melt right on there. Cover it with the borax good. Stick it back in the fire. Two things about heating a weld fire. You want to bring it up to heat slowly, and you never want to crank the air up on it, because what happens when you, like if you have a hand crank forge or a high powered blower, you just throw the air to it, it'll oxidize the metal, and two things can happen. It can either burn quickly, or the oxidation on the metal will prevent it from welding. So you want a nice hot fire and bring it up to heat slowly. There's two ways to tell when you're at a welding heat. If you have a nice white hot fire, the metal becomes the same color as the fire. The other way is that you'll see tiny sparks start to appear right at the top of the flames. And then that's definitely time to get the metal out and hammer it. And when I bring it out, I'm going to give it a quick tap on the anvil to knock the flux and the scale off. And then it should work. Scale is oxidation of the metal and the coal sticking to it. The flux floats the scale off of there and doesn't stick to the metal. We got little sparks at the top, so we're ready to go. You can see the sparks coming off of there. Watch yourself. Nope, too hot. Too hot. That's what happens when you burn your metal. So, that's the way it goes. Now that metal's ruined, so I'll have to cut it off, and I think I got enough I can keep going. Well, that's the thing about anything you do. You make mistakes, and a lot of times you learn more from your mistakes than you do if things go smoothly. And I've been making things, and they haven't turned out the way I thought, and I look at it and I go, hey, that's better than what I was going to make. So never be worried about making mistakes. So you don't have to film this. I'm just going to have to split the horns again. That time it worked. So tool steel is a little more finicky than mild steel. Mild steel, you can heat it pretty good and not burn it. But the thing about tool steel is the alloys they had even 20 or 30 years ago weren't as precise as the alloys today. So when you're working with old steel, you're never really sure exactly what it is. So we'll proceed to make the rest of the dragon head. The tools that hold the metal are called tongs, and there's all different shapes and sizes for different processes. Like this is called a bolt tong because it's for round stuff, and then you have a bolt head in there. These are both, and there's different sizes. There's all different kinds of names, different kinds of tongs with different kinds of purposes. And that's one nice thing about this trade is you make your own tools. So if you have a specific need, you can make a tool to fit it. Okay, now we're going to cut the mouth for the dragon's head. Again, we use a slit chisel. Okay, now I'll put some nostrils and some eyes on it now. We're just going to keep it simple for time's sake, but you can spend all the time you want on a dragon. And one thing about dragons, if someone tells you it doesn't look like a dragon, just ask them, well, when did you ever see a dragon? So, So dragons can be anything. That's why they're fun to make. Now I have some other tools that I made. And they're made out of the same thing as the coil spring. And so got a couple of different punches and chisels. Okay, this is just a very small square punch. This is a punch. It's oval with an indentation. I use that for making eyes. And this is a center punch. And all these were made out of the coil spring, the same thing the knife's made out of. First, I'll take the square punch and make a couple indentations for the nose. And take this one for the eyes and maybe kind of bulge them out a little bit. And then I'll take the center punch in the nose and give it nostrils. All right. I'm just going to put a little twist in the horns so it doesn't look so much like a cow. Maybe I'll do it. I think I might need more heat. I know it isn't. If you wanted to make a cow's head, you could do it the same way, or a ram's head. It's pretty much the same process. Split your horns out first, fold it, weld it, put the face on. There we are. That's all the time we're going to spend on that today. Like I said, you could spend all day on something like this if you wanted to. Thanks for watching. If you like this video and want to see more, subscribe or hit the like button. Thanks again. Have fun blacksmithing.